Hey, that's better. Okay, guys, so I'm Duncan. I'm from Google. I work for the bit of Google UK that looks after some of the largest advertisers that we have amongst our customer base. And the reason I'm here today is because I'm principally involved in the personal injury sector. And over the last year since I joined Google, I've got to know you all a little bit. Some very familiar and friendly faces in the room, and it's great to meet some new folks as well. So good to be here. Presentation over the next 20 minutes or so is going to cover a few areas, but principally my interest is in marketing, since that's really where Google's bread and butter is earned. I certainly couldn't hope to cover all the ways in which the world and technology and the way people use technology is changing industries, and especially the legal sector. That's probably a job for another day, but I can certainly give you a bit of an insight as to how technology is changing the way people interact with your businesses online and what you need to be doing about that as law firms. Can I just get a quick show of hands as to how many people are directly involved in a marketing function in their place of work? Okay, that's good news. And I'm guessing the rest of you have got sufficient clout to give their asses a good kicking when you get back to the office. But I'm hoping that a lot of the content in here is going to be very familiar for you in terms of what you're doing already. But you never know. After the next 20 minutes, you might have one or two nuggets you can take away that will improve the way you do business and the way you interact with your customers and your prospective customers online. Okay. So the title of the presentation is Embracing the Change. I think there will be an opportunity to have a bit of an embrace at a later stage once we go into that kind of post-lunch, sugar-low, sleepy zone. So watch this space for that. And the three sections that this presentation split into is first of all to talk a little bit about some big changes that are going on in the world around us. Second of all, to talk about some very disruptive trends in technology that you all should be aware of if you aren't already. And then specifically talking about moments that matter for your customers and prospects and the ability for digital and the online world to give a marketer and a business the ability to reach the right person at the right time in the right context. But first, let's play a little game. Can everyone stand up, please, and face someone that's next to them? And if anyone happens to be by themselves, then go on. Yeah, shimmy along. You should by now be facing each other and having a little chat. Marvelous. If everyone can please put their arms out to the side. Yes. And everyone now please dip their left arm. Dip their left arm and now go in for the hug. Let's go, everyone. Yes. Oh, check that out. That is awesome.
Do you need it?
No, I'm good. I'll be okay. Thank you. Though I might take you up on that later. There's a gentleman sitting next to Mr. Twombly thinking, thank God we did that, Duncan. I've been wanting to give that guy a hug since I came into the room. Okay, so why have we done that, guys? Well, let's talk about innovation. The first is it's a bit of fun, right? And if you smile and you chat, then what happens to the bit of your brain that's called the reticular activating system is that blood starts to go into it. And that means that your thought processes change and you become a little bit more susceptible to creativity and innovative thoughts. You ever heard the expression, I'm too busy to think? You're at your desk, you're focused on your screen and everything's in that zone and it's just, you can't get out of it. Well, there's a reason why people say that. It's because generally, if you don't have the blood flowing in the brain, particularly in that bit called the reticular activating system, that's the kind of zone you can get into. What we just did, secondly, was we got uncomfortably excited, especially the gentleman next to Andrew Twombly. Uncomfortably excited about what we did, particularly as Brits. Well, that is how you should be feeling in business. Yeah. If you're sitting there doing what you would do every day and kind of in your comfort zone and cranking out the cases and cranking out the customer conversations without feeling a little bit fluttery in the tummy, then it inevitably means you're not doing anything particularly disruptive or different. You should always feel a little bit excited, uncomfortably excited about the stuff you're doing, at least some of the time. So the general principle is it's all about disruption. So the godfather of the Mo, Mark Twain, said, if you don't do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? But as a business, it's less obvious. businesses can become very staid into a downward and incremental spiral into mediocrity unless they're challenging the way they do things, the way their competitors are doing things, and recognizing trends that are, in the future, going to be disruptive to their business. You'll be constantly seeking opportunities to disrupt yourself. Think about the late early 15th, 16th centuries, the spice trade. Spice was one of the most valuable commodities and used commonly to disguise bad tasting meat, typically because it had gone off. And you know what? That business needed desperately to innovate because some clever dick outside the trade figured out that if they insulated the hulls of ships, then they'd be able to preserve ice on long journeys. And ice was used as a substitute for spice to preserve food. Thus, ice disrupted the spice trade. Well, what went wrong for the spice traders? Simply, a technical innovation completely disrupted their industry. In the course of a century or so, the spice trade was all but eliminated. Now, these days, with technical innovations, that can happen a lot quicker than it did for the spice trade. Almost every market or sector gets disrupted eventually. Think about the makers of candles. Well, they weren't the ones that invented the light bulb, were they? And very rarely does an incumbent in an industry, and there are many sitting amongst us today, and many you know who are outside this room, many incumbents don't disrupt themselves and, in fact, fail to do so. Let's think about a couple of brands that have become part of the vernacular over the last 5 years. Netflix in streaming video, Airbnb in places to stay, and Uber, which I was a customer of today. The service is just incredible. If I got a black taxi from Manchester Piccadilly to here, it would have cost me the best part of 15 quid. Uber cost me 7 and was easier to hail. So at Google, we're always trying to disrupt ourselves, whether that be me thinking about the way I'm going to do a presentation to a load of legal eagles, the top in the industry, or whether that be the guys in Mountain View in California thinking about ways in which Google is going to disrupt itself over the next 5 and 10 years. We have a lab that's run by Sergey Brin, who's the bearded fellow top left, top right, one of the founders of Google, who runs Google X, and his responsibility is to incubate these disruptive technologies, amongst them the driverless car. Loon is a project I encourage you all to check out just by matter of interest. It's a technology that enables us to cover wide areas of the globe with internet access that don't have any fixed telecoms infrastructure. And then that contact lens, the bit on the contact lens you might not recognize, is a chip that recognizes your blood glucose levels in the moisture on your eye that can give diabetics an early warning as to when they might need an injection of insulin. You're thinking, yeah, you're Google. You've got piles of cash. You're constantly disrupting yourself by buying companies, investing hundreds of millions of dollars in research and innovation. We're law firms. How could we possibly think in those terms? So I was thinking about a slightly more inclusive definition of innovation, and one that might apply to your own industry and your own day-to-day lives as you go back to your offices. In Google, we think about innovation in a kind of 70-20-10 split, with 70% of our business and our resources tied up with our core, and that is clearly our search marketing business. 20% is involved in new product development and incremental and sometimes more disruptive innovations to that core product set, and then 10% for the more wacky stuff, the Google X stuff I've just talked about. So let's talk about the core, our search marketing business, our search engine. You know what, that search engine is subject to some 500 small improvements every year. And some of them are announced, some of them are picked up by the press, and some of them just drop in and people just notice things have got a little bit better. And if you add up all of those 500 incremental improvements that the core product team make to our search business every year, you actually end up with a hell of a lot of innovation as a result of stacking those 500 incremental improvements. And I think that's a more inclusive definition of innovation that you all should be thinking about in terms of your businesses day to day. Remember, Google was late to the search engine party. All right, so the second part of the presentation is about disruptive and accelerating trends. The pace of change is accelerating, and I'm pretty sure it's not because I'm getting slower. The world certainly seems to be speeding up. And one of the principles underlying this acceleration is something called Moore's Law. Gordon Moore, I think his name was a founder of Intel. Corporation. And in the 1960s, he noticed that the number of transistors that one could get on a square inch of silicon chip was roughly doubling every 18 months. And what that means in layman's terms is that the computing power, the speed of the processing power of a chip, was roughly doubling every 18 months. And Moore's law has remained constant since it was originally coined by Gordon himself back in the 1960s. So what that means, of course, is that a device like a smartphone that everyone has in their pockets is becoming an extremely powerful device. Effectively a supercomputer in everyone's pockets. And it's not just the smartphone. We're consuming content across roughly 6 screens nowadays: the desktop, the mobile, the tablet, the TV, the wearable. We all heard about Apple's Watch this week. And the in-car screen, which is going to become extremely well used and well talked about in the next 5 years, I would say. In fact, we have close to a square foot of screen for every adult on Earth. So that typical bottom left and to the top right graph shows the more than exponential growth of the square footage of screens available in the world today. So we've got about 4.2 billion square foot in the world, so 1 square foot per adult. And that line is only going to go in one direction. And we've got a couple of images which are quite provocative here as well. We got on the left a picture of folks clamoring to take a photo of the immediate aftermath of the 100 meters final in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. And on the right, a similarly excited group of individuals at the London 2012 Olympics, taking a photo of Usain Bolt after his triumphant 100 meters victory. But what are the devices that people are holding in their hands? Well, on the left, you've got a camcorder, how quaint, a Casio camera, a water bottle, and on the right, we have a bunch of smartphones and a tablet. But what's not very obvious from those photos is that the devices on the right are, of course, all connected. And it's that connectivity that is enabling people to do things very differently to how they were doing things back in 2008, all those years ago. And the world is becoming a sea of connected devices. So this year we'll have about 7 billion connected devices in the world, so roughly 1 for every person on the planet. And by some estimates, by 2020, that number is going to be more than 30 billion. Now, that doesn't mean that the world's population is going to be 30 billion. It's going to be more like 8 billion by 2020. But 30 billion connected devices between now and 2020, that's a 5 times increase in the next 5 years. And what's happened is that networks, telecom networks, and chips embedded in fast processors, in fast devices, in connected devices, are simply enabling people to connect items around them, whether that be a parking meter, your fridge, your toaster, your smartphone, your smoke alarm, and using your smartphone, which is something I don't believe is going away anytime soon, gives individuals the ability to interact with those devices in context, and gives marketers and businesses the ability to interact with individuals who are in turn interacting to this connected environment around them. Let's think about disruptive change. So what's this? Well, this is the final moments of the transatlantic subsea telecom cable being laid. It was built over 25 to 30 years, and overnight, when it was connected, it increased the number of concurrent phone calls that could be made between Europe and the US from something like 5 to 90,000. So no longer did people have to send a letter on a boat. Now that's disruption in action. This dude, another beard. What is it about beards? I think it's beard envy. He's Dr. Martin Cooper, the inventor of the mobile telephone. Now, clever chap and all that, massively visionary, but could he, when he invented the mobile telephone in the 1970s, really have envisaged a world where someone like me, someone like you, could use your smartphone to order a takeaway on the way home, to Skype with the kids, to catch up with work email, to book an Uber, all from one device? Well, for businesses like yours, these sort of disruptive changes in technology are going to affect you, like it or lump it. So let's talk about moments that matter to conclude this short presentation. At Google, we have a tool that's available to everyone called Google Consumer Surveys, and it enables an individual or a business to commission a survey and to get very, very quick answers to any question you want, really, in a short period of time. And we commissioned one of these surveys for this conference today and asked 1,500 adults in the UK some questions. Now, I'm just presenting a couple of the answers to those. There's a more comprehensive survey that ran off the back of this I can share with anyone that wants it afterwards. But if you happen to need a lawyer, was the first question we asked, where would you start? And of those 1,500 adults, so 18 plus in the UK, 31% said they searched the internet first of all, which I would say probably is going to be a lot greater and probably even in first place in 6 to 12 months' time. Such are usage habits changing. Well, that first question, are those 31% of people that said, well, I'd search the internet first if I wanted to speak to a lawyer. We took those respondents that said search the internet through to a second question. And we asked them, would they contact more than one? Would they just go after one? Or would they just contact the first link that looked any good? And fairly predictably, nearly half said they'd contact more than one. So you're in an environment where people that are searching online for a claims management company or a solicitor's firm are going to be contacting, or at least researching in the first instance, more than one, most of the time. And if you think about the selection process, as with any other sector, the web has given clients much, much greater reach, a much greater capacity to research businesses before they reach out and have a conversation with them. That's what content marketing is all about. It's not about explaining how great you are on your web page, but it's about using other means to reach people, whether that be ads, video distribution networks like YouTube, or blogs to get your content out there, to feed the juice that is Google's organic algorithm, and also to allow people to comment about your business, to interact online, and hopefully then increase the chances that they'll reach out to you and inquire. A quick bit about search. So when someone searches online, typically using Google, we call that a search query. And this is a snapshot of search queries for legal in the UK year on year from 2012 through to the bit of 2015 we've had already. And as you'll notice, we've had a brisk start to the year in legal in 2015. I'm not sure if that's reflected in your businesses, but certainly some of the folks who've been catching up today have said that it's been a pretty brisk start to the year. And we've seen it at the Google front end, where people searching for relevant terms in legal are doing so more in the first 2 months of this year than they have in any year previously. And we think this is a trend that will probably continue. More people are searching for stuff online as part of their journey to finding and locating a lawyer. Some of the spikes we've seen in particular are personal injury generically in law has been particularly busy, industrial negligence, medical negligence, and a real spike in RTA this January. We've also seen some movement in conveyancing and wills and probate. Now let's zoom in to PI, since that's what we're principally interested in today. And we've noticed, again, a reflection, very, very busy start to the year, some 50% up in queries year on year. And let's talk about mobiles, since that was really what I focused on for the first bit of my presentation. This is a line which starkly illustrates the huge increase we're seeing in people searching Google in legal-related queries over time. From January 2006, pretty much the inception of the smartphone, where you could search Google for the first time, all the way through to modern day, today, and the spikes we see there. And then in the legal industry in the UK, queries by device. Again, stark illustration of the ascendancy of mobile. The green line showing number of queries originating on mobile devices, and the blue line depicting a combination of desktop and tablet. And if you allow your mind to extrapolate that graph to the right, you'll probably predict that the crossover point, so the point at which the mobile queries are greater than the desktop and tablet queries, will be around Q4 this year. We turn to digital in the moments that matter. I remember when my son in 2010 decided it would be gloriously funny to break open the crayon box and decorate Mummy and Daddy's sitting room wall with an artistic representation of us in a forest. And at that moment, when I spotted this ridiculous graffiti that he'd spent the last 10 minutes whilst we were glued to the TV drawing, I picked up my phone and immediately searched. I searched for a substance that would get rid of the bloody crayon. I searched for a Farrow and Ball colour that would match white. Only joking. And I searched for someone that could come round and paint it, all in that first 5 minutes of fury, whilst we were trying to congratulate him on this wonderful work of art. And that, in itself, is a moment that mattered. And the smartphone was the device that got me the answers I wanted in the moment that mattered. How we're constantly connected. We're constantly connected at the moments that matter to all of us. Here's a lady. She searched for the nearest cash machine out and about. But during her day, she also does other searches. She's looking for Breaking Bad episodes online on her desktop machine. She's looking for holiday spots in Barbados. She's looking for a local coffee bar. She's researching that legal issue. And all of those times are moments of gold for marketers because they all have context. They all reflect a moment in time in her journey that, if you're doing your advertising correctly, will enable you to reach her at the right time, in the right place, and in context. And think of all those millions of people and those billions of moments that matter. This is no longer about spraying and praying on TV, guys. This is about using your marketing budget effectively to reach people in those moments that matter, using technologies like the ones Google makes available to make that happen. So a simple way to think about this, guys. As marketers, it's all about being there, being relevant, and above all, being optimized when that moment that matters happens. It's been a pleasure talking to you all today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.